Well, it's one of the biggest clashes that we have seen over wokeism, as some say. And on the other hand, you have those who are more traditional in what academics must offer. Well, this doesn't exactly sum up, but then what we do have on our hands is a massive face-off. It's Trump versus the administration at Harvard University, an Ivy League university. It's given one of the biggest greats that we have seen in India, be it India Inc., some of the biggest policy makers as well as politicians are alumni of the Harvard University. They've roamed the hallowed halls, but today it's in the eye of a center. And it's not just Harvard. You all know how in the last couple of months we've had at least 10 Ivy League colleges which have been in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. In fact, joining us today, we have Professor Ryan D. Enos. He's a professor of political science at the Harvard University. Thank you so much, Professor Enos, for joining us here. It's very interesting because you are joining us at a time. In just a few hours back, we heard that Harvard University has decided to take the fight back to the Trump administration by suing it for saying that it cannot enroll any more foreign students. What's very interesting is the statement that Harvard University had put out, saying Harvard cannot be Harvard without its international students. Many of the other universities, Professor Enos, I'm talking about the topmost Ivy League universities, have buckled down to the administration's pressure. What is going to be Harvard's way forward? Clearly, it's going to be a fight back.
Yeah, it has to fight back. This is about the independence of Harvard as an institution. And in the American tradition, the institutions of higher education have academic freedom and have the ability to do what they want outside of political control from the government. And what Donald Trump is trying to do is to impose political control on Harvard in a way that is unprecedented in American history. And there is no other path other than to fight back, even though it's very costly to do so.
It's interesting that you're calling it academic freedom because the Trump administration has said that our fight is not against academics. Our fight is against what is being taught in Harvard. They said it's anti-Semitism, it's racism, it's aggression and violence. How do you react to that?
None of that is true. And I will argue with anybody that would claim it is. If they say things like that, they clearly have no idea what is going on at a place like Harvard. I work here every day. This is my home. It is my employer. It is my community. And the people here are wonderful, accepting people. The idea that Harvard is someplace that's full of racism or anti-Semitism or anything else simply cannot be backed up by the facts. It is something that the Trump administration has come up with as a pretext to attack Harvard and other universities.
Mm-hmm. I was speaking to some of the Republicans earlier in the day, and they are suggesting that this is the way Trump does business. They are suggesting that this is a negotiation. Does it mean that there is scope to negotiate, to perhaps meet the Trump administration somewhere in between? Would Harvard be willing to do that?
I don't think Harvard should. You don't negotiate with bullies. What Trump cares about is not policy. He doesn't want to bring Harvard to a certain position. What he wants to do is to bend Harvard to its will, to have power over it. And Harvard could try to negotiate with him like Columbia did. And all that earned them was more punishment from Trump. And so I think doing so would be a foolish way forward that would do nobody any good.
But do you feel Harvard may stand isolated in this war? Because we've seen, you've named Columbia, there have been others as well who have buckled to the pressure. How long can Harvard sustain this kind of a war? It's expensive, you're absolutely right, but it's legal, and also it's against the very government that you are going to be fighting against, you're up against.
So more than any other university, and maybe more than any other institution in the United States civil society, Harvard has the means to do this. They have the prestige, and they have the money, and they have the know-how to fight back. And I think that what American society has been looking for, because this is not just an attack on Harvard, but an attack on civil society more generally, is somebody to stand up and fight back. And many people have rallied to Harvard's side when that happened. Harvard's donations have increased a tremendous amount since it stood up to the Trump administration. And as long as it keeps doing it, I think that they will continue to have support more broadly from civil society.
Oh, that's very interesting to hear. Having said that, it is, as we were discussing, an expensive war, but then do you think you can win this in the courts? Of course, in the court of California, for example, you have Judge White, I believe, who has said that the US administration has wreaked havoc on the lives of the plaintiffs. So it was a case-specific one. There was no specific overarching stay which came on. But do you think that the courts will give you more relief now that you've decided to sue the government itself?
My understanding is that Harvard has a very strong case. I'm not a lawyer, but all the lawyers I talk to tell me that Harvard has a winning position in these cases. And so if the Trump administration will follow the law, which they are constitutionally and legally bound to, then then they will be stopped by the courts who should side with Harvard in this case.
Well, of course, some of the shining examples of law and lawyers do come from your corridors, isn't it? But again, we are specifically looking at the international students here because a lot of people back here in India know people who are there. There are about 800, almost 800 Indian students who are currently studying in Harvard. What's the mood like on the ground? What can the administration do to assuage their fears at a time when they are looking at what seems to be an uncertain future?
It's very uncertain, and I feel terribly for the international students here. These are some of the most remarkable people I know. They're people that have shown themselves to be among the best and brightest students in the world and had earned a right to be here. To have this sort of uncertainty unfairly put upon them is an awful thing, a thing that they don't deserve at all. And what I'm glad to see is that the community is rallying around them, and I'm hoping that in addition to challenging this in the courts, that the community, including the Harvard administration, will continue to reach out to these students and tell them that we support them, and we will do everything in our power to keep them here and protect them.
But is Howard also looking at other alternatives just in case things don't go the way you've planned? What happens to these students? Are you looking at off-campus, other extensions of the university that you may be looking at to try and place them? Are you exploring other alternatives?
I don't know what policies in particular the Harvard administration is exploring at this moment. I know that among faculty, all these alternatives are being vigorously discussed. And I would have to imagine that the Harvard administration is doing the same thing.
It's also very interesting that you have China here, which is coming out now, preaching United States about rights, ironically. China has come out and said it's very dangerous what US is doing to itself, which is destroying its core strength. Teachings and preachings coming in from China about democracy. Professor Enos?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, China, of course, doesn't have a right to lecture anybody about democracy, but I do think that shows just how much damage the Trump administration has done to the United States and the reputation of the United States across the world. You know, the American system of government and our system of higher education is something that people from across the world have looked at with envy and tried to emulate. China has tried to emulate the American system of higher education. And now, because of petty political grievances, the Trump administration is attacking something that is the envy across the world and is leading to these types of situations where the Chinese government feels like they are empowered to lecture the United States on its behavior.
Professor Enos, final question. You live in Harvard. You said it's not just where you work, it's your community, it's your home. What's the mood like on the campus right now? What does it feel like? Is there uneasiness? Is there that will to fight back, or is it a bit of despondency? What's happening there?
Well, I think all those words are right. I mean, people are despondent because our members of our community are being attacked. Valuable members of our community are under an attack, and we feel so awful for them. But I also feel that everybody understands that what we have to do is fight back, and there's no other way forward. So that is what we're going to continue to do, and ask the country to rally to our side to keep up this fight, because it's not just a fight for Harvard. It's a fight for democracy in the United States more largely, and it's something we must take up.
Well, that has been very interesting to speak to you, Professor Enos. Of course, the professor has come out and said that yes, there may be despondency, but fighting back is the only option. And it's very telling what Harvard has said. It has said without its international students, Harvard is not Harvard. Really appreciate it, Professor Enos, for joining us here on Times Now and sparing your time for us.